Just as we are approaching the 10 a.m. mark, it's great to be starting on time this morning. And I'll just start by saying welcome everybody to this important webinar today. And I am Kelly Fowler. I'm Chief Executive at Belong. And it's a real pleasure and privilege to be here with you this morning and see so many of you on this call. I'd like to just start by introducing this Parallel Lives 20 year on, exploring the drivers of interethnic contact in the UK. This is a 3-year research project funded by the ESRC, and we're really proud to be partnering with colleagues from the University of East Anglia, the University of Oxford and the University of Bristol in this important study. And I'll be handing over to our chair shortly, who'll make introductions to the team. But just to briefly say that the title of the research refers to a term originally coined by Professor Ted Cantle, author of the Cantle Report that was published in 2001. And Ted was commissioned at the time by government to investigate the violent clashes that happened in 3 northern towns across the summer of 2001. And that report painted a picture of different ethnic communities living parallel lives, often segregated residentially, living alongside each other, but rarely, if ever, interacting. And whilst that Cantle report sparked a response from government at the time and has gone on to influence policy and practice, still to this day, its lessons and its findings continue to resonate. And some may say even more important at this time than it has been for some years, because the deep-rooted challenges that report highlighted have still not gone away. So the voice and work of Ted Cantle continues to influence our work here at Belong and the field more broadly. And I know that there are few people as qualified as he is to take on the role that I'm about to announce. So I'm delighted, therefore, to hand over to Ted Cantle, Professor Ted Cantle, who has accepted our invitation to chair the advisory panel and will lead today's session forwards. Over to you, Ted.
Thanks very much, Kelly. I have to say it is with some trepidation that I take on this role. Somewhat mixed views after all this time. In a way, disappointed that the concept of parallel lives is still with us, that we're still worrying about it. It's still evident 25 years after the concept was developed. But on the other hand, I'm delighted that we've got this research project going now. We've got a very eminent academic team. We've got Belong, who are highly skilled in developing the work into policy and practice as a result of the findings. So I'm really hopeful that this research is going to lead to some very significant policy change and some support to practitioners too. It's great to see it going ahead. One of the remarkable things I think that we found 25 years ago, talking to different communities up and down the country, not just in the 3 spotlighted northern towns, the remarkable thing was that nobody actually wanted parallel lives. None of the communities that we spoke to really felt that that was the future that they wanted. That was the future that they wanted for their children either. So there was a lot of goodwill towards the change that they really saw as being very necessary in all communities. They felt trapped. They felt trapped by the social, cultural and institutional arrangements. And they really, I think, welcomed the idea of trying to break down some of those parallel lives and develop greater contact with people from different backgrounds. So a really positive attitude, actually, even then. And we do need some goodwill with this project. We've around 110,000 racially motivated hate crimes in the UK every year. It goes up and down a bit, but it's stubbornly high level at all times. So we've really got problems that need to be dealt with. And the Integration Hub suggests that strong patterns of neighborhood clustering still persist. that we still have low levels of meaningful contact between groups in a wide range of areas. We see still segregation in school, in other social environments. So schools, workplaces, sports and cultural settings are really part of this. It isn't just about residential areas. We have to think about the way we live our lives in all senses. And there's one difference now that we have that we didn't experience at all 25 years ago, and that's the impact of social media and online content. I think it's possible to say that 25 years ago, this just was not a factor at all, didn't come into our reckoning. But now we see some of the physical separation compounded by what happens in the virtual settings. So I think this is another very, very significant challenge which we have to come to terms with. On the other hand, the opportunities that we now face, I think, are much more significant. The Beyond Us and Them report, which Belong produced just a few years ago, showed that investment in cohesion really did lead to a reduction in interethnic tensions and conflict, and most particularly resulted in a greater level of trust in communities. So I think there's every reason to suppose that relatively minor levels of investment in cohesion really do pay off. And I think this project will really help to inform that. And we also know from the many, many studies that have taken place that we can see a reduction in prejudice. We can see a reduction in the stereotyping that we see in everyday lives. And most of all, we can see greater resilience being built through greater contact between different groups. So again, I emphasize that although we have challenges, the positive opportunities here are really, I think, very exciting. I'm really looking forward to this project developing. So it's with the greatest pleasure that I can hand over to our principal investigator, Rose Malidi, who will, I think, introduce her team and introduce the project to you. Rose.
Thanks very much, Ted. And thank you very much for chairing today's meeting and agreeing to chair the advisory panel. It's great to have you on board. I'm just going to share my slides. So I'm going to talk probably for about 20 minutes about the project, and then at the end of that I'll introduce my project team and then open the floor for any questions. Can everybody see my slides okay? Yeah, brilliant, thank you. So this project, funded by the ESRC, represents a collaboration between academics and Belong, and inspired by Ted's report almost 25 years ago. So as Ted has kindly introduced this morning, following the 2001 race riots, the Cantor report highlighted the depth of division in our UK towns and cities. And many communities were described as living parallel lives because of segregation along ethnic lines. Even in highly diverse communities, people from different ethnic groups were breathing the same air but walking past each other. And nearly 25 years since the Cantor report was published, data suggests that strong patterns of neighbourhood ethnic clustering persist. As Ted said, there's data from the Integration Hub, and also this recent report from the Challenge suggested that 50% of UK adults have no friends from other ethnic groups to their own. And this is problematic, given that we know that interactions between members of different groups, what we refer to in psychology as intergroup contact, can have a wide range of benefits for individuals and society. There's substantial evidence in psychology that positive interactions between members of different ethnic groups reduces prejudice and fosters tolerance and mutual understanding. And this effect has been proven to be strong and consistent. So no matter the setting, the people involved, or the location, having more contact with people from different ethnic groups is linked to having less prejudice and more positive attitudes towards other groups and the goals of social integration generally. And the evidence is so robust that intergroup contact has been described as our best hope for improving race relations. So knowing how beneficial it can be then, how do we actually promote greater contact between people from different ethnic backgrounds? Understanding more about the drivers of intergroup contact has been identified by the government's integrated communities strategy paper as being key to building social cohesion. But if we look at the research literature, we don't fully understand from a psychological perspective what encourages people to connect with others from different groups. And this is because most of the research, although there's a big research base on social psychology, on intergroup contact, most of that research studies the consequences of intergroup contact. So what happens after contact occurs and what benefits does it facilitate? But far less attention has been paid to what causes people to engage in intergroup contact in the first place. So we normally look at the consequences of intergroup contact, and there's actually very little research that's looked at the predictors of intergroup contact. So that's the kind of overarching goal of this new project, is we want to take a new approach and we want to look at what leads people to interact with others from different groups, instead of just studying what happens after they do. This project, as I've said, was co-designed between academics and Belong. And so on the academic team is myself, Rose Malidi. I'm Professor of Psychology at the University of East Anglia in Norwich. And we have Shelley McEwen-Jones, who's Professor of Psychology at the University of Oxford. We have George Leckie, who's Professor of Social Statistics at the University of Bristol. Jo Broadwood from Belong co-designed the project with us, and she's a co-investigator. And then the postdoctoral researcher Hannah Peets, who's based with me at UEA, she'll be leading the implementation of the project on a day-to-day basis. As I said, I'll hand over to the project team to introduce themselves shortly. And we're also going to establish a stakeholder group which draws on Belong's membership network, including, we hope, representatives from local and national government, civil society sectors, as well as independent practitioners. And I think that will be really important in terms of making sure that this academic research actually reaches the communities that we intend it to reach and impacts policy and practice. So we hope that the stakeholder group will meet 3 times during the project at key pinch points, and its role is going to be to support the translation of the research findings into accessible guidance for policy and practice. So if I break the research down, then we have 3 sort of main project objectives. The overarching one is that we want to understand how personal and environmental factors combine to shape people's willingness to interact with people from different ethnic groups to themselves. Within that, we also want to investigate whether different factors lead to positive or negative interactions between groups, and explore whether the reasons for engaging in intergroup contact may differ between members of the ethnic majority group and ethnic minority group members. So I'll now talk a little bit about each of these objectives in turn, and I'll explain how our research project aims to achieve them. So a precondition to any form of intergroup contact, of course, is the presence of people from different ethnic groups in one's community. So that is the existence of opportunities for intergroup contact. For people to interact across ethnic group lines, they first need to live, work, or study near each other. However, importantly, research suggests that having opportunities for intergroup contact or living, working, studying in diverse environments doesn't necessarily guarantee that intergroup contact will occur. People generally prefer to interact with ethnically similar others, even in diverse environments. Here's an example of that. This figure is taken from an observational study that monitored seating patterns in a university canteen in the northwest of England over a 2-week period. And here's just one of those observations. The black dots in this image indicate where Asian students sat. The white dots indicate where white students sat, and then the triangles indicate people from other ethnic backgrounds. And you can see in this canteen area that there's strong clustering of ethnic groups. Even though there's the presence of different ethnic groups, they're all eating, studying in the same location, they still self-segregate. And there's less racial integration than would be expected by random mixing. And similar patterns have been seen in other kind of observational studies as well, not just in this canteen, but in other public spaces, in beaches, in nightclubs, in playgrounds, in public transport. So we want to understand then, if having the opportunity for contact doesn't necessarily translate into greater contact engagement, we want to understand how people's attitudes and their personality work together with features of their local environment to influence how much they interact with people from different ethnic groups. And by doing this, we can then try to figure out when or for whom does opportunities for intergroup contact actually lead to more contact between different groups. So we're introducing that combination or that interaction between psychological factors and environmental factors to predict when contact occurs. And we intend to look at a number of psychological factors that we expect to predict people's willingness to engage in intergroup contact. And this includes things like people's personality traits, so how open or agreeable they are, their political views and their ideology, how strongly people identify with their ethnic group, whether that's an important part of their self-definition, their self-identification, and a variety of attitudes as well. So how strongly do people perceive that they're a target of discrimination? How much do people recognise that other groups are discriminated against? How do people feel towards diversity? Do they see it as an opportunity for growth, for self-expansion, or do they see it as a threat? Do they worry about being like both physical danger, but also worries about access to resources that diversity may entail? And then at the same time, we'll also consider neighbourhood factors as well, such as the ethnic makeup of people's local environments, as Ted has introduced as well, local rates of hate crime to give us that kind of indication of how, what is the social climate that people are living in and how supportive is it towards integration or not, which is also indicated by things like vote share in the local area. We can look at vote share for far right or anti-minority political parties in the area, as well as things like how active people are in community groups and volunteering to give us an idea of the sort of levels of social cohesion in an area. And we want to see how those personal and neighbourhood factors work together. For example, we might find that having more people from different ethnic groups nearby leads to more interactions, but only or mainly amongst people who are more open-minded or more politically progressive, or those who see diversity as a chance to learn and grow. So it depends upon people's psychology. On the other hand, you might expect people living in very segregated neighbourhoods are less likely to have contact with people from different ethnic groups. And this may be especially the case for people who feel perhaps anxious or uncomfortable around other groups, for instance. Another important question is, when intergroup contact occurs, what makes those interactions between different ethnic groups positive or negative? Most previous research on the topic of intergroup contact looks at whether people are willing to engage with people from different groups, but it doesn't necessarily focus very much on how good or bad those interactions are. And this matters because positive interactions help bring people together and reduce prejudice. What we mean when I've said intergroup contact, I'm guilty of it myself. When I say intergroup contact, what I really mean is positive intergroup contact. What matters for improving social cohesion is positive interactions between people from different ethnic groups. And the research base suggests that while positive interactions are very beneficial for reducing prejudice and improving social cohesion, negative experiences can make prejudice worse. And actually, some recent research suggests that bad experiences actually have a stronger impact and do more harm than good experiences do good. So we specifically want to explore what factors lead to positive intergroup interactions, and then also which ones are linked to negative experiences. For example, like skills like perspective taking, being able to see things from another group's point of view, or having positive expectations regarding intergroup contact, they may be factors that particularly are important in terms of making sure interactions go well. Whereas feelings of anxiety about meeting from other groups or being particularly sensitive to rejection based on race may lead to more negative experiences. Our third goal is to find out whether different things motivate people from different groups. Different factors motivate people from different groups to seek out contact with others. Most research so far is focused on why people from ethnic majority groups choose to interact with ethnic minority group members. But it's likely that different factors may introduce the choices of ethnic minority group members. For instance, we may expect people from ethnic minority groups who feel they're often treated unfairly, maybe less willing to connect with others, and this may affect ethnic minority group members more than it does people from the ethnic majority group, those perceptions of discrimination. Whereas if we think about the majority group, on the other hand, perhaps when a neighbourhood encourages everyone to get along, people from the majority group might be more likely to join in because they often feel more connected to the community and more strongly represented by the leaders who promote its values. So to better understand this, in all of our studies, we're going to oversample Asian and Black British communities so we can hear directly from ethnic minority group members about their experiences and their views. So this is a 3-year project that's going to consist of 3 work packages over the course of the 3 years, and I'll briefly talk about those 3 work packages. The first work package, which we're already nearing completion of, involves secondary data analysis of a large-scale existing data set. So what we're doing is we're using the Understanding Society data set, which is a large household panel study that includes more than 40,000 participants, to look at drivers of intergroup contact engagement. So this data set has a measure of how much people socialise with people from ethnic groups, and it has a huge sample, including a large ethnic minority group sample. And it also includes a number of variables that we might expect to predict contact engagement, some of those psychological factors and personality factors that I talked about a few moments ago. So we're using that data set to understand how individuals' psychology or their traits and their local context interact to shape their engagement in intergroup contact. And we're comparing across ethnic majority and ethnic minority groups to understand if different factors predict contact engagement more strongly for different groups. And this is a longitudinal data set as well, which is really nice. So it collects data that they sample from the same participants multiple times, so that people are asked about their attitudes multiple times and their contact engagement multiple times. So what that allows us to do statistically is to explore what we call bidirectional relations. So we expect, for instance, that people's perceptions of threat posed by ethnic minority groups or ethnic outgroups may reduce the likelihood of intergroup contact engagement. But having those interactions, we also expect to help reduce those feelings of threat. So we expect quite a lot of bidirectional relationships. People with less favourable attitudes are less likely to engage in contact, but contact should also predict those attitudes and improve those attitudes. The Understanding Society data set that we've been looking at is fantastic because it's extremely large. It's got a sample that's representative of the UK population, and it's got that ethnic minority boost sample. But the downside of secondary data analysis is that we didn't design the questions that went into that survey. We kind of have to make do with what's already there. So to follow up on that secondary data analysis, we plan to conduct new primary data collection where we will survey a smaller but still a representative sample of the UK population and look at their intergroup contact experiences. And what this will allow us to do is include our own measures for our own purposes. So crucially, whereas the Understanding Society dataset just measures how much people are engaging in contact, we're going to be looking at the quality of those interactions as well. So how much contact are people engaging in, and is that contact, or how much positive contact and how much negative contact are they experiencing? So by gathering new data, we can include more factors that we think will affect how people interact with others and get better information about those interactions, including both the good and the bad experiences that people have. For instance, we'll measure things like empathy, perspective taking, people's values, their rejection sensitivity. So when they interact with people from ethnic groups, do they worry about being a target of discrimination, but also do they worry about being perceived as biased themselves, as well as things like their skills. So how well skilled are people at interacting with people from other ethnic groups. And we'll test whether some factors lead to better contact while others may predict worse encounters. So for instance, we may expect that people who are good at understanding and appreciating different cultures, who can see things from other people's point of view, are more likely to have positive interactions with others. But on the other hand, people who are more sensitive to rejection and tend to worry a lot may focus on the negative parts of those interactions, which can make their experiences less positive. And then the final work package is going to be a little bit different. We're going to do some in-depth local diary studies. So whereas the first and second work package have been survey studies with large populations, what we intend to do in the last part of the project is actually to zoom in on local areas that the government has identified as priorities for improving social cohesion. Because ultimately it's in these places where positive contact between different ethnic groups is needed most. And we'll also be trying out a different method of a new way of studying these interactions as well. So most of the psychological research on intergroup contact relies on surveys or questionnaires where people have to remember and then report on the contact that they've experienced, often over quite lengthy times. So for instance, a question might ask, how much contact have you had with people from different ethnic groups in the last 6 months? And have those experiences, how positive have they been, how negative have they been? And we're beginning to recognise in the field that this isn't necessarily providing an accurate picture of people's daily lives, because they cannot recall or accurately aggregate experiences over those long periods. So what we'd like to do in this final work package is use daily diary studies where people are actually recording their intergroup contact experiences as they happen or shortly after they happen. And this method will also allow us to explore some new interesting questions as well that actually zoom in at a really fine-grained level on the nature of people's contact encounters and how that predicts their willingness to engage in further intergroup contact. So if people have a positive interaction on day one, how does that affect whether people will seek out contact the next day? Or if they have a negative interaction, do they then have less contact over the coming days because they've been put off, if you like, by that negative encounter? So looking at new types of questions about the sort of temporal dynamics of intergroup contact and what does it look like on the ground, and how do positive or negative interactions increase or reduce the likelihood of further intergroup contact happening. The findings from our project are going to be communicated both through academic papers and also through policy briefings, policy reports, roundtables, and further public events. So it's a really nice collaboration between academics. We intend to publish this in academic papers, but we're working with Belong to make sure that those findings are then disseminated to the policy community as well. And we hope that by studying what helps people from different backgrounds connect and how this differs among different people and in different areas, our findings will help guide programs that can fit the unique needs of different communities. So, for example, in neighbourhoods with lots of diversity and lots of tension, the focus may be on reducing fears that meeting others will cause problems, whereas in areas with less diversity, the goal could be to help people build skills and build confidence to engage with those from different backgrounds, boost their intercultural competence and their confidence in these types of interactions. And we hope that these tailored approaches will help ensure that opportunities and the benefits of intergroup contact are fully enjoyed by all. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm now going to hand over to my colleagues for a quick round of introductions. And after that, we'd love to hear from you, and feel free to ask us anything or share your thoughts about the project. So shall we go Shelley, George, and then Hannah? I'll stop sharing my slides now.
Thank you so much, Rose. Hi everyone. I'm Shelley. I'm a social psychologist. I am from Northern Ireland, and I'm interested in understanding the nature and effects of intergroup contact. I work quite a lot with young people. I spent the last 9 years working in a school of education at Bristol, and I'm now back in psychology at Oxford. And what my work shows, even though I'm an idealist, my work tends to show that people don't engage in contact even when they have the opportunity to do so. And so what I've been thinking more about over the last few years is, okay, well, if that's the case, how can we better understand what encourages people or not to engage in these interactions? And it was I was looking back at my emails, Rose and Ted, because it turns out it was in 2021 that Rose and I met and said, we should do some work together. Why don't we discuss some ideas? And we knew from the outset that one of the things we wanted to do was make sure, if we're looking at predictors of contact, we think about not just generating research knowledge, but thinking about how it can make an impact in the world. So again, idealist, right? Thinking about how we can push things forward in society as well for the betterment of everybody. And we thought, okay, well, who can we collaborate with? And at the time, I was part of a DFE panel on promoting integration across the education sector, which Ted was conveniently part of. So I took the opportunity to email Ted through a thread that was involving something else and said, hi, we're thinking about this project. Do you know anyone who'd be interested? And Ted said, not only replied, but did so within 2 hours, according to my emails, and said, this sounds great. Let me connect you up with Belong. And so from there, this project is being co-developed with the Belong network. So it's really great to see it. I can't believe it's 4 years ago since we started planning this project. But we are here. We have the funds, and they're being led by the wonderful Rose. And it's wonderful to see so many of you here. I just saw in the chat. So Huma Niazi, who I worked with on another project in Bradford with young people looking at interactions, is here as well. So many of you in the audience are also here. So it's great that we're thinking about the project and how we can bring together both the science and the impact and the practice together. So thank you so much for joining us. That was a bit longer than I intended, but I was just inspired to look at when we started to think about these ideas. So I will pass. Did we say George next, Rose? Yeah, George.
Hello all. Yes, George Leckie, Professor of Social Statistics, University of Bristol. I bring expertise in methods and data analysis of these large, complex, messy, longitudinal and clustered data sets that we'll be analysing. Some of my own empirical work has been on social and ethnic segregation in London schools. So I often work in an educational setting. And so I'll bring some of that experience as well. And yeah, delighted to be here today and that there's so many people to help inform our project. So looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
And Hannah?
Yes. Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm the postdoctoral researcher on this project, and I'm doing the day-to-day research activity on this project. So I'll be mostly involved in data collection, data analysis, and then together with the team writing up the reports and doing the academic side of the dissemination. I've completed my PhD in social development, which is a bit of a different topic, but through that I've gained a lot of experience in large data collection, multi-level, longitudinal types of data analysis, which is exactly what we need for this project as well.
Thank you very much, Hannah. That's great. Can I thank everybody for an excellent presentation? Very clear, very exciting, and really very comprehensive, and of course, hopefully resulting in the practical outcomes that were set out in the report. Now, there's a chance for questions, and I think we have a Q&A facility here, which I'm hoping is very smooth. So questions, please. Okay, one from Ellen Harrison. On integration areas, are you aware if they will change or the list expanded? From what I can see online, it looks like they were first identified in 2019. Any comment on the integration areas that you're looking at or potentially going to look at?
Yeah, it is not really confirmed yet. We started with those 5 integration areas that were identified in 2019, but we always said that we'd kind of be flexible, and as and when it's time to start that phase of the project, we'd identify what we think are the best or most important areas at that point and whether they've been updated. So we haven't really made those decisions yet. Jenny, you've been thinking a bit about that, so I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add on that.
Yeah, so they were pilot integration areas, and unfortunately the pilot didn't lead into an expansion of the programme, even though they showed phenomenal results, and it was what the Beyond Us and Them research really focused in on, the higher levels of volunteering, where you've had that budget to be able to really make links between different organisations and the council, and to have better communication between the council. And the Beyond Us and Them research was all during the pandemic. Really important that those messages were getting through, and because there'd already been that infrastructure in place in the local authorities that had been identified as pilot integration areas, they had those links. They knew who the community leaders were. They knew how to get to the grassroots leadership that was maybe a little bit apprehensive, cynical, switched off from all the messages that were coming through, and they could talk to those people individually, and they were really the influential people in getting much higher levels of take up in some of the communities that were not taking up the vaccine, for instance. So from that, there was higher levels of trust in local authority. Really important at this time when we need some democratic renewal. So cohesion is so linked into local authority trust. So I'm working as Belong's research and development manager closely with Joe, who has been mentioned, was involved in the development of this project. And our main aim is to work with the many local authorities that Belong is currently working with, and to encourage people to come forward, really. And it's great to see in the chat that there's already people coming forward. So we haven't identified that the 5 areas where the video and diary work will take place, because we want to see where there's enthusiasm, and then we want to match that with where we'll make good geographical differences and points of comparison. So if you're interested, please let us know, and we'll be delighted to consider that as the project develops and as we can see what sort of comparisons we want to make. And great to see, Bradford offers a huge amount of integration, and so does Barnet. So very different stories, and that's part of what this project can do, and what Belong's strength is really in having those links with civil society organisations and local authorities working on cohesion issues. So that's a little bit from me, filling in how we link in with this research.
Thanks, Jenny. And I think there is going to be a lot of interest in which areas are selected. I know Claire Lane has also asked us a very similar question to Ellen as well. Can we go on to Alex? Alex Fraser's asked a question about whether there is a budget or resource available for civil society organisations involved in the project. Rose, could you answer that?
Yeah, well, there's budget in the sense that there's budget to support a stakeholder group. So that's where we'd like the involvement of civil society organisations to sort of support, to help us as we implement the research, to ensure that what we're doing is relevant for policy and practice, and then to help us sort of disseminate those findings to the right community as well. So there's budget to support stakeholder groups that includes representation from civil society organisation, and then there's also budget, of course, for our data collection. So where we will collect data, those diary studies, particularly in local areas, we've got funds to do so. So we'll be able to pay participants for getting involved and that kind of thing. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I think it does, as well as it can be at this at this stage, I think. Another question from Dr. Joe Coleman is whether there is a faith aspect to the research, pointing out that working with interfaith organisations in the past, and the umbrella organisation Interfaith UK actually closed down last year. I know this is a really important issue, I think, the connection with faith. And it is sad to see the interfaith organisation collapse, but I know there are still a lot of local interfaith connections which are continuing. So is faith going to be included?
Yeah, Shelley, I wonder if you might be happy to speak on that a little bit, because you've done some work at this intersection of ethnicity and faith before.
Yeah, so I think this is something that, I would say generally we're not us, but us including others are not particularly good at, like separating out or thinking about the complexity between faith and ethnicity. I think for the earlier phases of the project, we'll be able to look at this insofar as where we've got that information. And then I think what we need to do for the later phases is really working with the local community organisations to understand, on the advisory group, is to understand that link between faith and ethnicity and how much we need to delve into that. Because I think we tend to just focus on ethnicity, at least in the things that we publish and write about in the contact literature. And I think the answer to this is we should be doing it. We should be doing it better. And I think we have to just see what we can do with that. So I know that's not the ideal the answer that you might be hoping for. But I think it needs to be something that we consider. And I think we're not entirely sure how we'll do it yet, and it'll be something that will emerge. But Rose, does this align with what we're thinking for the later parts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something we get people's advice from in the local areas as well, about how we might be able to incorporate that.
Yeah, there's another question which I think is related in a way from Jake Puddle, who says that ethnic minority panels currently used by survey polling companies often oversample people who are urban, educated, more likely to get involved. These are the people responding to online surveys, for example, and wonders whether the diary taking methodology might try and reach underrepresented groups and more recent migrants who have less confidence in speaking English. So there's very much a social class dimension to this, and I would say that applies to white majority groups as well as minority groups. How that sampling is conducted is crucial. So any thoughts about that from from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely right. And that's an important critique of most psychology research in general, is that we reach those populations and not the underrepresented ones. And then we sort of generalize our findings across the board. So yes, that's something we're sort of aware of, and something that we'll be particularly able to hopefully address with the final wave of the research, where we do the diary studies, where we're not relying on polling companies or online data collection. We hopefully will be able to reach a better sample in those areas. And the more buy-in we have from sort of local authorities, I think the easier that will be to reach a better participant group than we'd be able to do online only.
Yeah. I think it helps to avoid placing too much reliance on community leaders as well, who often, well, can be gatekeepers to their communities rather than the gateways to them. So I think, as you say, the involvement of local areas is going to be crucial in getting this right, isn't it? Okay, another question from Claire. Will the surveys be collected from respondents across the UK, or is the focus England only?
Yeah, across the UK. The Understanding Society dataset is across the UK, and then we will mirror that in our primary data collection as well. And like George has kind of touched upon, our data analysis will then account for that clustering within local areas. So being able to determine whether different predictors matter more in different areas is our goal.
Okay. Is it a chance to go back to Northern Ireland for some research, Shelley? I don't know. We've also got an offer from support from Blackburn and Darwin, you'd be pleased to know. And I'm sure there will be one or two others as well. Sandra Beaton, how will this work fit with the current work by the Independent Commission on Neighbourhoods? Any thoughts on that?
Jenny, is that perhaps one for you?
It's probably one for Kelly as well, because we're working closely with a lot of local authorities at the moment, and neighbourhoods is a key policy area at the moment. Kelly, do you want to fill in more on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touch on it there, Jenny. At Belong, obviously a key aspect of what we do in our organisation is that we're constantly looking for opportunities to collaborate and I suppose to amplify and support other practice that's happening in this space. And the Independent Commission on Neighbourhoods is looking perhaps more broadly at some of the things that are influencing how communities do or don't come together. So Belong is pleased to be a part of one of the steering groups that are looking into that work, and we will be watching and sort of, I suppose, feeding in what we're finding in terms of our work and learning from that as well as we go.
Okay, thank you for that. A question from Councillor Sarah Conway. Are you doing any mapping of where communities naturally come together, especially place-based, for example, around environmental parks, groups, etc.? Again, this is going to be highly localised. Any thoughts on that? Existing mapping?
Not so much. There is some kind of work in that space, but that's not really the scope of our project. We're not really interested in doing that kind of environmental mapping. It's more of this interaction between sort of local levels of diversity and indicators of the sort of local climate towards social cohesion and then people's psychology. So although we're interested in the amount of contact people engage in and what that contact looked like in terms of its positivity or negativity, but not so much in terms of mapping of that kind of where it happens, because there is quite a lot of work in that space already.
Okay, thank you. Ian Hepplewhite, my role covers a broad region, Yorkshire and North East, emerging but relatively new migration into places like East Durham, but they feel significantly different in their journey to, say, Bradford. So interested in capturing that different range. Also curious about how you will look across age groups. Some of my senses say that young people are more open, but some recent political opinions suggest otherwise. I have to say it's a very interesting question, because we've always expected the newest generation to be more open, but there is some research suggesting that that isn't the case, particularly in some communities. So a fascinating question. Any response to that?
Yeah, I mean, age is definitely something that we'll explore. So we've got this kind of like psychological toolkit, but also we intend to look at people's basic demographic factors as well. So things like their age, gender potentially, education level, obviously residential location, those kind of things. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting comment, and it would be interesting to see what we find as a function of age and whether that may differ as a function of place or group as well. Yeah, thank you for that comment.
I think it was also about some of the new migration as well and the different journeys there, which again, I think Jenny covered earlier on, that we'd be trying to get a different match of areas to reflect different patterns. But that is going to be important. From Humanizami Race Equality Network, we support over 80 grassroots organisations in Bradford. How will civil society organisations be identified? Who will engage in this project? Will there be an equal split between those living in North and South? I find a lot of research is carried out in the South, and often communities living in the North are left out. Well, again, I'm sure you're going to try and cover both North and South and the different range, but any further thoughts about that?
Jenny, are you happy to say that one? We kind of had conversations along those lines the other day, didn't we?
We did, yeah. We're holding it open at the moment, because I think that the sorts of issues that are coming up in the chat are absolutely what we need to hear and take on board with our decision making. We need places that are enthusiastic and behind it, and we also need to make sure that we get a good demographic range from the different nations, from North and South of England as well. We're based in Manchester. We tend to be tipped the other way. We work more with northern local authorities than we do with ones in the south, and a lot of the real pinch points around social cohesion are so linked to poverty, inequality, all the things that make life difficult day to day, and some of those are so stark in many of the northern places, as well as in parts of the south as well. So we are looking for that variation. We're looking for the different migration, people who've migrated from different parts of the world, to be able to show that some nuance between different communities, how they mix together. The ways that are more successful with some might not be the ways that are more successful with others. So variety is key, and getting that demographic diversity. And we also got the message from Sian from City of Sanctuary as well, around the local authorities that have taken on board City of Sanctuary, to make sure that there's some inclusion of that work as well. Some local authorities really front and centre their social cohesion work. Others, it's there and it's assumed that it will happen anyway, and we'll be looking at that mixture. That's key.
Okay, got a chance for a few more questions. One from Diana Evans: will the diary only be written document, or is there a chance to engage through short videos, blogs, to encourage a wider demographic that would recall their experiences in a different manner?
I think that's a really nice question, and something that would be good food for thought. We haven't done too much planning for that yet. Our intention probably is that it would be something that people complete on their smartphones, but those comments earlier about making sure that we reach a good representative sample, I think that's good to take on board. And yeah, we might be able to think how we could incorporate some other methods of data collection as well, so that we can reach a nice participant group. I think, yeah, thank you very much for that thought, and that's something we can have a think about.
Yeah, it's a great idea. From Rob Deeks: how can we keep in touch with this fascinating project and become aware of any opportunities and contribute as they arise? Now we've got people interested, how do we try and make sure that their interest is sustained? Any views about that? Might be you, Jenny, as much as anybody else, to respond to that. Is it going to be some sort of newsletter?
Shall I come in first?
Yeah, go on.
So part of making sure that we're connected with people working at grassroots level and at local authority level is through the advisory group that we're setting up, that Ted is kindly going to chair for us. Now that's not meeting a huge number of times. We have invited a small number of civil society organisations to join that already. We're inviting some local authorities. We're looking for involvement from both the Department of Culture, Media and Sport and from the Ministry of HCLG, Housing, Communities and Local Government. So that we've got those different perspectives coming into the advisory group. But I think in terms of other ways, it'll be featured in Belong's newsletter and on intermittent basis when there's something exciting to share. And we'll have a think about other ways that people might want to get involved, particularly as it grows towards the third stage, if you like, which is that those diaries, where we really get down to the nitty-gritty of what goes on in people's lives in different places. Does that sound like it makes sense to both Rose and Shelley?
Yeah, I think the Belong newsletter is the obvious route to go in the first instance too. Yeah, great. That's very helpful. Liz from the Linking Network, based in Bradford, working in 25 areas in England, expanding into Wales shortly, using social contact theory to bring together children and young people in schools through our school linking project. I think I'm right in saying that school linking's been going at must be about 20 years. So well done to Liz on that. The School Linking Network say they would love to help, and hopefully that's something that they can be plugged into this network too.
We're very pleased that they're interested and definitely want to plug in with them as well. Our work runs in parallel, and it's really important, the work that's going on in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, get them early. That's the key. Preschool would be even better. Okay, is it possible for us to share a copy of the presentation following the event? Is everybody happy? Well, particularly Rose and the team, would you be happy to share your slides?
Yeah, very happy to. Alex, perhaps I'll send them to you for distribution, but yeah, very happy to do so.
We can both do that, and this whole webinar will go up on our website as well, so if you'll be able to find it on the Belong research section.
Great. I think we've got to the end of the questions, which is very good timing, as I'm about to hand over to Kelly to draw things to a close. But just see whether there are any more questions that have come in. No, I don't think there are. Okay, well, my thanks again to the team for an excellent presentation, very clear. And can I also thank everybody for the questions? I think they've been very helpful and certainly will help us to develop the project. And I think particularly the questions on the areas, on how the selection of the different sampling groups is going to be extremely helpful. So, Kelly, can I hand over to you to close the event?
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Ted. And I'll just echo your thanks to everybody, really. It's been brilliant to be taken through this project today. I think having heard sort of detail and exchanges with Jenny over time, particularly, and the research team, and seeing it on paper, it sounds actually much more exciting as well when we bring it to life. And it's been brilliant to be taken through. So I thank you all for that. And as Ted said, thanks to everybody for your insightful questions as well, and for really, I guess, trying to challenge us and stretch us to go even further with this. For me, what's I think particularly exciting is just sort of picking up on the point Shelley made earlier, which is that, you know, it's actually, this is a real opportunity to try to affect things on a practice level and at a policy level. You know, this is, I suppose, where Belong is really excited and enthused about pieces of work like this, because that's where we're also best placed as well to try to help to support our network and our members and our local authorities to really try to operationalise some of this as well, translate it into practice. And it also struck me as well, something that Rose said very early on about, you know, this interethnic contact. This is the best chance that we've got, and it really I think speaks to the heart of this and how valuable and important this research is. So, you know, from a Belong perspective, I can't emphasize enough how excited we are that this is taking place. And just to quickly mention, Jenny touched on this, but we're excited at national level. Belong will be delivering some national guidance for local authorities in relation to cohesion. And that is due to be published later on this year. Alongside that, we're already working in 10 towns and cities affected by the violent disorder that took place last year. So from doing early community engagement, where we see the need for this work so much, right the way through to co-design of strategies and strategic frameworks, and then helping to design interventions as well to help to make sure that cohesion is on the map in local authorities for the longer term. You know, those are some of the key pieces that we're already doing. And so it's fantastic that we've got pieces of research like this as well that are going to help to continue to shape and inform the work that we're doing at that very practical level. So I'll stop there, but I just wanted to sort of touch on those points really and make those reflections. And as Ted said, just to thank you all for this and for the work that you're about to do. It's tremendously exciting and we're very grateful. And thanks, of course, as well to those that are going to form part of our advisory group, ranging from colleagues in DCMS to MHCLG, right through to the Eden Project and Street Games. You know, we're very much wanting to work and are going to be working from the statutory partners right the way through to those voluntary sector partners as well. So thank you very much for your support today, and we look forward to hearing the results of this brilliant project.